Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with Part 24, Tongs of Terror, from A History of Secret Societies by Arkon Daraul. Chapter 23, Tongs of Terror. A person who has committed a murder shall conceal himself, cut off some of his hair and tie the same round his right arm, and when he goes to seek refuge among his brothers, he shall wipe his left eye, and the brotherhood shall provide him with expenses and means of escape. This is one of the rules of the Topei Kong secret society among the Chinese, who of all peoples have developed clandestine associations to the ultimate pitch of efficiency. The origins of Chinese secret societies are almost all legendary. Some are most poetical, most are patriotic, many are criminal in the usual sense of the word. Inside China itself, they have functioned as resistance movements against the Manchus, as welfare organizations, as espionage networks. The Boxers' Rebellion of 1900 was started and maintained by a secret society. The Republican leader, Dr. Sun Yat-sen, worked largely by means of one such association, which eventually became the Kuomintang, the Nationalist Party of China. When the Republican government fled to Formosa, the Kuomintang remained and still is the major political party of the Free Chinese. The Communists, led by Mao Zedong, were early organized as a secret society. Between the years 1950 and 1960, both of these opposing elements sought to gain control of the tens of millions of overseas Chinese who lived in Malaya, the Philippines, and elsewhere throughout Southeast Asia. At the same time, Communist and Free Chinese secret society influence sought to penetrate the communities of Chinese in America, Europe, and Africa. The Formosa government maintained contact with their supporters on the communist mainland through these societies, which the Paping government still seeks to crush, and which it vilifies frequently in the official press. Chinese secret society seal combines names of planets. The center rectangle contains the name of the chief at the time, Yun Qing, Triad Society. The Chinese take their secret societies seriously, and there are few of them who are not members, affiliates, or entitled by hereditary right to membership. The time cannot yet be foreseen when this kind of activity will cease to play a large part in Chinese thought and life. The half-crazed, slit-eyed assassin of fiction, the opium den of the Tong, the kidnapping, gambling dens, and the horrid rituals of initiation are still with us, and they will remain so for a very long time to come. Chinese records of nearly 2,000 years ago tell of the carnation-painted eyebrows society with painted faces, whose leader nearly became ruler of the country through banditry. They were defeated when the loyal troops painted their faces in the same bizarre pattern and attacked them. The Carnation eyebrows were confused and routed. This was a time of general anarchy, and among the secret societies which ranged the country in armed bands were such picturesquely named bodies as the Copper Horses and the Iron Shins. In the 2nd century of the Christian era, a Taoist magician called Chang Kio declared himself to be a god and gathered around himself a numerous following in the northeast of China. Within a few years, there were so many members of the cult that they had to be split up under 36 generals. In a month, these yellow turban rebels had subdued the whole of the north of China, helped by their secret associates among the apparently law-abiding populace. But one secret society's activities could give birth to another. It was in the struggle against the Yellow Turbans that Guan Yu took an oath with 2 other warriors to liberate the country from them. His activities caused him to become deified as the god of war, and the patron of yet other secret societies, among them the Triad cult. It is not until a period when the Crusades were raging in the Near East that we have a record of the actual oaths taken by secret society members, upon which many of the present-day oath-taking ceremonies are modeled. In 1102, 108 men took this vow. We, 108 persons assembled in this hall, regard the stars as our brothers and heaven and earth as our father and mother. Every heart is spotless. We bind ourselves to share each other's happiness and sorrow. May anyone who is unkind or double-dealing be attacked by devils. May knives and swords cut our bodies and thunderbolts destroy every trace of us. May we everlastingly sink into hell and not be reborn as human beings. May heaven and all the gods look down upon us as we swear. The members swore to meet in every single incarnation, then they drank each other's blood mixed with wine. It was 200 years later that the notorious White Lotus Society was formed. The Mongols had beaten down Chinese resistance, and the fearsome Kublai Khan was in full control. A rumor started that a certain omen would herald the liberation of the country. When stirs the one-eyed man of stone, this dynasty will be overthrown. Shortly after this slogan became current in the mouth of every urchin, a stone image of a one-eyed man was found on the banks of the Yellow River. The White Lotus Society, which had been founded some years earlier, and which perhaps started the one-eyed man rumor, now proclaimed itself destined to liberate the land. The Buddhist Messiah was at hand, said its leaders, and tens of thousands joined them, including 3 powerful bandit chiefs. One of these latter claimed royal descent, dressed his followers in red turbans, and tried to seize the throne. The White Lotus remained active, though not completely successful, for centuries after this. Numerous rebellions and other unsavory undertakings are ascribed to this group. By 1761, the Emperor Qianlong had to issue an edict against the Lotus and the illustrious Worthies and White Cloud societies, which were patriotic, anti-Manchu, and also semi-criminal organizations. The society worked under the pretense of being a religious sect, purporting to cure diseases through incantations. Pretenders, supposedly descended from the rightful heirs of the usurped Ming dynasty, rose from time to time and were supported by the Lotus organization. This development is important because the Lotus and its descendants, especially the powerful Triad society which still exists, are founded upon a royalist and patriotic myth. The eventual object of the society, so runs the teaching, is to restore the Mings, a resolve which appealed to a great number of the people who felt themselves to be oppressed. But in the higher degrees of initiation, the secret was revealed to initiates that the word Ming stood for light. This is its literal meaning in Chinese. And the objective of the Triad and others was to obtain power over all China for the society which considered itself as the light. This is why today, with very little likelihood of an imperial Ming restoration, the Triad and other groups can remain in operation and retain their immense power. Startling evidence of the power of the secret societies and their real objective as political and financial power came with the victory of Dr. Sun Yat-sen. In January 1912, Sun was installed as President of the Chinese Republic. As his first official act, the Republican president went to the tombs of the Ming dynasty and in a public ceremony informed the spirits of the imperial Mings that the Manchus had been driven from the country. Dr. Sun was, of course, a Christian, but this action, as a member of the Triad Society, was one of Chinese religious and secret society import. And of course, he did not restore the Mings to the throne. But his Kuomintang party, descended from the Triad secret society, remained the official power in the land. It has been said that the Triad society was not derived from that of the White Lotus, but merely used its rituals and some of its history. But there are grounds for supposing that they are in reality one and the same body. The fact that the Lotus men helped to place the first Ming on the throne in the 14th century was somewhat marred by their intervention against the Mings in the 17th. This resulted in the triumph of the Manchus, and this could be the reason why Triad men are not always anxious to be identified with the Lotus. Towards the end of the 18th century, a White Lotus chief, Liu Qihye, produced an authentic descendant of the Mings as the candidate for the imperial throne. Lotus rebellion was in full flower, and the story circulated was that the pretender, Wang Fashking, was a genuine royal Ming, whom Liu had reared secretly outside China for the Great Day. Over 100,000 Lotus men were in arms, fighting for 6 years until Liu was captured. Then for a further 4 years, the civil war raged, costing the society and the throne millions in money and lives. When the revolt was put down, the young pretender disappeared. In 1814, the imperial palace was attacked by what has been described as a coalition of several secret societies: the White Lotus, the White Feather, the 3 Incense Sticks, the 8 Diagrams, and the Rationalists. It is probable that at least some of these names were merely alternatives used by the Triad, because this society uses as symbols some of the objects mentioned above. The rebellion was well organized and came as a complete surprise to the authorities. It was planned by secret society leaders who claimed occult powers and who had bribed palace officials with immense sums of money. This rising failed only due to a mistake in the dates upon which it should have taken place and was put down. The second son of the emperor, it is recorded, realizing that this was an occultist activity, when he could not kill a rebel with his ordinary musket balls, tore off one of his silver buttons and fired it at the man, who now toppled to the ground. Magic and the reputed ability to see the future has always played a large part in Chinese secret society activities. In the 1814 rising, the loyalist elements invoked the thunder gods, whereupon we are told a large number of the rebels were killed by lightning in a terrible thunderstorm which broke out. The inner workings of the minds of these cultists is interesting to note whenever opportunity arises. Although their seers were generally supposed to know the future, and hence could be expected to know whether a revolt would succeed or not, they ultimately maintained that the future was only partly predestined. The revolution would succeed, they said, providing that the emotional pitch and dedication of the members was sufficiently great. To this end, rituals and initiations were devised and rigidly practiced. This note runs through the frenzied dedication of all the secret societies of this nature. The Boxers, actually members of the Fist for Protection Society, who attacked the legations in Peiping in 1900, were trained to a pitch of zeal and fanaticism which has seldom been equaled. They had been initiated in darkness, alternated with fight, in the depths of temples to the accompaniment of fasting and invocations. They had to recite meaningless phrases taken from Taoist magic and undergo complicated gymnastics. They swallowed a variety of drugs and potions, as well as mystical diagrams written on red paper. The result was to condition their minds to ideas of success, supernatural aid, invulnerability, insensibility to pain, enthusiasm, and blind obedience. The Boxers also, and more literally correctly, often called the Fists for Righteous Harmony, were a mystical organization derived from the Big Sword Society. And the Big Swords is one of the names used by the Triad Society, which lurks behind so many of the activities of Chinese secret associations. Their training is supposedly based upon that of the fighting monks of Shaolin Monastery, who preserved certain secrets of meditation which made them invulnerable and endowed with various supernatural powers. It is these very militant monks who are the supposed originators of the desperate Triad Society. Every member must try to emulate the virtues of these monks, and all revere the tale of their doings. Members are put through a form of training which is supposed to be the same as that which the militant anchorites devised, thus making them superior to all other men. It is fitting here to study the myth of the mysterious monks. Bamboo summons to Tong member, calling him to a meeting. In AD 1674, the initiate is told, there lived a community of monks in Fujian province. They had been there at least 1,000 years and had perfected certain arts which raised them to a position of superior men. In addition to having supernatural powers through their Buddhist meditations, they were masters in the arts of war. The brothers initiated and taught those who came to seek knowledge, and their institution became a famous place of religio-military importance. A foreign prince had invaded China and inflicted numerous defeats upon the national forces. The emperor had been compelled to call upon the entire nation to help to defend the realm. An honored graduate of the monks' military academy heard the proclamation and hurried to consult the order. The 128 sages who dwelt there immediately formed themselves into a chivalrous band and hurried to the court. There the emperor received them and accepted their services, raised each one to the rank of general, and offered whatever men or money they might need. They asked only for food and horses, and, tarrying only to choose a fortunate day, set out to give battle. In under 3 months, and without casualties on their own side, the warrior monks completely subdued the enemy, even cutting their way into his country and forcing him to pay tribute. The emperor was delighted with the victory, and again offered the monks anything that they desired, but they did not want worldly goods. The warlord disciple, however, who had first thought of bringing the sages into the fight, was showered with presents and given a high military office. Thus far, the myth prepares the mind of the member by glorifying fighting and self-sacrifice, ascribing a high antiquity and religious sanctions to the movement, linking it with imperial commands, and showing the power of dedication and discipline. The actual mystery of how the monks obtained their supernatural powers is reserved for the leaders of the order. To continue the history, the monks were rewarded with a tablet and scrolls written by the emperor himself. They were personally escorted to the gate by His Sublime Majesty on their departure. They received a tremendous welcome from the country people of their region, to whom they showed the imperial commendations. These items are important in that they contain slogans which the triad member must memorize and keep before him. On the tablet was inscribed, "Imperial favor, kindness and honor." The scroll stated, "First in bravery, matchless heroes," and it was not by learning that they got to court through warlike skill they saw the emperor. These messages convey to the initiate that he need not spend half of his life in study before he can distinguish himself. Now the legend takes an interesting turn. There were two traitors at the imperial court. They desired to overcome the emperor, but realized that while the terrible monks of Fujian still had their power, there was no chance of their success. They therefore hit upon the design of telling the monarch that the monks were a danger to the throne because none could stand against them, and they were known to be training young men in the military art and their secret powers. The emperor was alarmed and asked them what he should do, which was just what they wanted. They sought and obtained from him forces of the imperial guard, with whom they proceeded to Fujian, armed with large supplies of gunpowder, to destroy the monastery. The traitors fell in with a monk who had been expelled from the devout community for irregular conduct, enlisted him as an officer, and with his help found their way to the monastery, surrounded it with inflammable materials and set it ablaze. Now the founder of the order, who had become an immortal, saw the flames as they ascended to heaven and summoned two other immortals to help the community. By pushing back one of the walls, the immortals enabled 18 monks, one of whom carried the emperor's triangular seal, which he had bestowed upon them in token of their absolute authority, to escape. They were severely burned, and 13 of them died. In memory of this treacherous occasion, all members curse their opponents and vow to destroy them, for they are considered to be like the traitors, just as the present members are like the monks. The 5 patriarchs who escaped were helped by certain boatmen, to whom they taught certain secret signals in token of their gratitude. They continued on in persecution for some time, saved again and again by the hovering immortals, just as our members are saved by the society when in trouble. Finally, just as they were ambushed at their devotions by a party of soldiers, a miraculous peachwood sword appeared. When this was shaken at the enemy, heads fell off like peach blossom before the wind. On this weapon was inscribed, "Subvert the Tsing and restore the Ming." With the sword, the monks performed many miracles. They recruited 5 further stalwart warriors as henchmen, known as Dai 5 Tiger Generals. The monks were still being actively persecuted on the instigation of the traitors. They had no food, homes, or possessions. They desired life in order to get revenge. At the same time, they wanted death to relieve them of their troubles. Now, in their wanderings, they met Chen Chin Nan, the person reputed to be the actual founder of the Triad Society. He had been driven from the court for honorably objecting to the proposed attack upon the monks in the first place. He took the wanderers in and looked after them. He gave them a spacious building, his beautiful red flower pavilion, in which to carry out their rites and practice warfare. One day the monks were strolling near this delightful retreat when they saw, floating in the Kungwei River, a large stone tripod incense burner with 2 ears. Shouting how wonderful, they examined it and found inscribed on the bottom, "Fan Tsing Fu Ming, subvert Tsing, restore Ming." This they carried to their altar, where twigs which they placed in it miraculously ignited themselves. They prayed for guidance and were told that they must obey the inscription on the stone. The monks consulted Chen, who issued a call to arms. 108 warriors responded, and also a comely lad called Liu, who mysteriously appeared. He revealed to the patriots that he was a legitimate Ming descendant and was unanimously chosen as the new ruler by the small force. The army was organized as a secret society with Chen as Grand Master, Jiang Chu, and the Red Flower Pavilion as the lodge. Various astronomical miracles accompanied this happy event. The name of the organization was Hung, which signifies both flood and red. The former because they were to overwhelm China like a flood, the latter because the sky was a glowing red at the time. They called themselves also the Brotherhood of Heaven and Earth. And the name Triad is derived from these three elements: brothers, heaven, earth. The revolt did not succeed. One of the greatest heroes of the Hung was killed, and the army became discouraged. They posthumously raised him to the rank of duke, wrapped the ashes of his body in red silk, and buried him in a lucky place with a triangular 10,000 ages monument, talismanically decorated with 16 characters, all based upon the sign for water. This done, the congregation sought the young would-be emperor. He had disappeared and was never seen again. It was now evident that for some reason, the precise time for the destruction of the dynasty had not yet arrived. Chen addressed the band, and after describing how the involuntary bending of his fingers had revealed to him supernaturally that there would be a further period of waiting, continued. "Gentlemen, I now advise you to disperse. Some of you are to take to the fields, others to the rivers. All must conceal themselves, conserve their strength, and practice virtue. Transmit from mouth to ear the secret aims of our society so that in future we may be successful. Gentlemen, I now bid you farewell." Before splitting up, secret signs were arranged and a special verse of recognition composed. At parting 5, a verse composed, which heroes carry undisclosed. But when their brothers this do see, they know the sign of unity. 5 provincial grand lodges were also established, one under each of the monkish patriarchs. The rituals of admission to the Triad Society are largely based upon these supposed happenings. These proceedings are exceedingly complicated and even tedious. The effect of the whole is to direct the mind of the member so that his every thought is concentrated upon the society and its rules, which are inculcated at almost every stage of the symbolic proceedings. Many of the principles are praiseworthy ones, but the result of the entire teaching is to make the organization a state within a state, and the only organization to which the member owes any real loyalty. He must obey his chief implicitly and is not allowed to act against a fellow member. Law cases must be brought before the society, not the ordinary courts. He must always protect a fellow member against the government of wherever he happens to be. He must be loyal and must fight when asked. The 21 rules or laws of the society forbid adultery with a woman connected with a member, committing a crime and imputing it to another member, obtaining money for the arrest of a member, falsely claiming a superior rank in the society, informing anyone about the existence of the society, parting with his book of ceremonies or certificate of membership, insulting or oppressing the weak, stealing from another member, failing to respond to a call or order, malconverting the society's funds, non-payment of dues. There are numerous signs of recognition, many poems which only the initiated know, and methods of identification based upon the way in which one drinks cups of tea. Abundant proof of the fact that the Triad is not really concerned with the Manchus and the Mings at all, but is a society dedicated to the acquisition of money and power, has been noted in the activities of the organization abroad. Several well-documented studies have been made, for instance, of the organization and depredations of the Triad in Malaya, where at times a large majority of all Chinese residents in Singapore and elsewhere were members. The gambling industry, opium trade, prostitution, and other activities of the society, as well as the struggle against the British authorities and the Christian missionaries, had little to do with the fight for the imperial throne. There is little evidence that the Triad abroad ever bothered about who was ruling China proper. On the other hand, there is a mass of material to show that the Triad and other secret societies worked ceaselessly for their own good and for the welfare of their leaders. There is also no doubt that the individual member received many benefits, but they were often the dubious ones of influence used to subvert the course of justice. The British in Malaya, especially in the 19th century, had an extraordinary and ever-shifting policy towards the societies. Some officials thought that they were not dangerous, others that they did not exist. When disturbances arose through fearful Tong fights, it was often said that these were not due to the secret societies at all. British traders stated that as the societies only persecuted each other, they should be allowed to carry on freely in their own way. For decades, the authorities were handicapped by having nobody who spoke Chinese to deal with the organizations, and relied from time to time upon the cooperation of chiefs of the Tongs themselves. Malays, Indians, and others were enrolled, and some Malays started their own societies, two of which were Islamic. The aims and objects were getting farther and farther from the restoration of the Mings as each day passed. In 1869, a law came into being in Malaya, providing for the registration of dangerous societies. And all associations except mercantile companies and European Freemasons had to register and furnish information about their places of meeting, members, signs, and rituals. Many did so, but provided bogus details which were accepted as genuine. This ordinance had, of course, no effect. The governor is on record as believing that it had worked well, although the only effect had been to register the societies incorrectly, and they were increasing in numbers and influence. By the end of the 19th century, the societies were better organized than ever before, in spite of policies of registration, suppression, partial suppression, and so on. After the middle of the 20th century, the terrible Tongs of China were operating, apparently without restraint, throughout Southeast Asia and wherever Chinese people were to be found. Extortion, racketeering, and murder were rife. Not even a theory as to how they might be approached, controlled, or suppressed had been produced. In the 1960s, after probably more than 2,000 years of connected villainy, there was no indication that the question would ever be settled. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.